Alright, so real quick, before I get started, I just wanted to share a little story, just because I think it's funny and I have no one else to share it with. So in Marvel Rivals, I was grinding Nightmare 4 because I wanted to beat it and I wanted to get footage of me beating it mainly, and I was having a real rough time. I'd been grinding it for days. I'd gotten to double Wanda like a couple of times and I never managed to beat it. And one day, I load in and I'm already in kind of a shitty mood because I've been grinding this for days. And I see my team comp is 3 blades and 1 magic. And I think that's fine. The meta for Nightmare 4 at the time was 3 blades and 1 extra character for utility. And then I noticed, though, that they were running blue magic. And for those who don't know, each character in the Marvel Zombies mode has 2 upgrade paths, blue and red. And at higher difficulties, blue magic is just way worse than red magic. So, of course, we get started, and they start dying just immediately. So my already bad mood is starting to get worse. And then a couple rounds in, my internet starts dying, and I decide that I'm just not in the mood to deal with this and to fight with my computer. So I just quit to desktop and I stop recording. I immediately delete the recording to save on space, and I just get up and I get some food and I get some writing done. And then like an hour later, I decide to log back in to give like one more go for the day. And I have my recording software open and I'm feeling better. And then the game surprises me and it starts loading me back into the game that I left. So I'm already confused. And then I'm completely stunned when I see that the 3 guys I abandoned were not only still going, but they were on double Wanda and about to win. So I'm just like I think fast and I just jump in, see if I can help push them over the line with my fucking like unupgraded blade because I left like fucking 15 like 18 rounds ago or whatever, and they do it. Like they beat Double Wanda, and it counts for me as a win despite the fact that I wasn't there for like an hour. And so one of the guys in VC is going like, "Oh hey, he's back," and everyone's fucking like laughing in the post game lobby and calling me lucky. And so after that, I'm just staring at the leaderboard in my match history, thinking, "Wow, that happened. That was weird." And it hits me that I'd been grinding this for days, trying to get footage of it, and then I just beat it by accident. And I laugh because like that's funny. And then the next thing hits me. I didn't hit record. So I'd done all that, spent days trying to get footage of me beating this fucking difficulty, and then I beat it by accident and didn't record it. So I'll put the stats screen up so you know I'm not making it up. You can see the disparity in the numbers because I literally wasn't present for most of the match. And I thought about recording the replay, but they don't save replays of the zombies mode. I guess because like those matches go on for like an hour, and I thought about going back and grinding for more footage, but like I was just sitting at like the quest that I had to complete to get the Queenslayer title, and I was just like, I don't want to fucking do that. I don't want to do that. So yeah, shout out to the 3 guys who accidentally carried me. Uh, Sorry I doubted you. Anyway, speaking of, it was while grinding Nightmare 4 and reading discussion about it online that I had the idea to make this video. I saw a lot of people saying that the way every common enemy in the mode could one-shot you regardless of your health was imbalanced. And don't get me wrong, the zombies mode they added to Rivals was unbalanced as hell. Hey, would you like to play Blade or one of the 4 characters that are worse than Blade? But in terms of the one-shots in Nightmare 4, I don't think so. I understand that it's absurd and really not that fun, but does that really make the difficulty imbalanced? And this got me thinking about other discussions of game balance I've seen. Plenty of people say Marvel Rivals is very imbalanced, but having talked about it several times now, I can't say I agree. Even outside of my regular hero shooter purview, I've seen a lot of discussion around balance, which has confounded me. So then, where is this coming from? I think most people understand what game balance is, at least in the broad strokes, but then again, I keep seeing people seeming to misunderstand and misuse the term, so what are they missing? Well, in that regard, I think I figured something out. So, before the year closes out, I want to give you all some ramblings that'll hopefully help you improve your understanding of game balance. I want to give a little primer on game balance, not just in hero shooters like Marvel Rivals, but in all games. I want to walk us through what it looks like, what it's there for, give my thoughts on it and what I think people are getting wrong about it, give various examples of game balance and its various pieces in action, and I also want to bring up an interesting little issue I've noticed. So let's not waste any time and ask the basic question. What is game balance? It's pretty simple, but there are layers to it. Game balance is a technique in game design where you have multiple systems in a game interacting in such a way as to provide checks and, you guessed it, balances to each other, with the goal of achieving a desired gameplay experience. Now, the most common example of this is balancing difficulty and fairness. In, say, a Mario game, the player completes easier levels first, which hones their skills and prepares them for harder levels. We call this a difficulty curve, and it's a good guideline for creating a balanced experience for the player. In this example, you can imagine our two elements, the player getting better and the game's levels getting harder, on a set of scales, literally balancing each other out. If the game were to throw its hardest levels at the player first thing, the experience wouldn't be well paced or fair for the player. The game would feel lopsided, with its elements stacked incorrectly and throwing everything off. Our experience wouldn't be balanced. That's not the only application of game balance though, and it's definitely one of the most simplistic, as we can achieve a solid understanding of it without a key ingredient of game balance: intention. Intention is the number one thing I think most people miss in regards to game balance. All game balance exists to serve an intended experience by the developer. It's both foundational to what decisions are made, and it also functions as a sort of modifier, altering how design elements are implemented. So it's very important to understand the intention behind a developer's design and decisions when going into a discussion of balance. In our visual, you can imagine the intention as the base of the scales. So in a similar vein to a difficulty curve, let me give you another example: the level scaling in Skyrim. Now for our purposes, let's keep things simple and just say the intended gameplay experience of Skyrim is to allow a casual player to feel like they are a hero on an adventure. Now let's lay out the elements we have to balance with each other. This is an RPG, so we have to factor in the player character getting stronger as they progress and quest around. That puts weight on the scales, and if we just left it there, our experience wouldn't be balanced. With only the RPG elements making our players stronger, they would quickly get to a point where they would be stronger than anything the game could throw at them, making for a boring and static experience. So how do we balance it out? Easy. We give them a series of increasingly difficult challenges to overcome. When the player is strong enough, they'll tackle new challenges appropriate to their level, keeping the experience fresh. But now is where we have to factor in our intention, and use it to modify our decisions, because if we leave things as is, we'll have a problem. We want our game to be casual friendly. We want a casual player to feel comfortable exploring, fighting, and questing around at their own pace. As is, our decisions have created a problem. What if the player stumbles into a challenge they aren't ready for? They might not understand that this part of the game isn't meant for their character just yet. They might waste hours on an experience they're not supposed to do, which could negatively impact their perception of the game. If they do understand that the challenge they stumbled into isn't meant for their character, then it might lead to an awkward experience where they walk up to a dungeon, excited about what they might find within, get their shit stomped, and then anticlimactically shuffle out, feeling down on the whole thing. Our solution, then, is level scaling, where we increase the levels of our enemies across the world as the player levels up, drip-feeding them harder and harder challenges as they progress. The player starts off with Restless Draugr and then progresses through the infamous Saber Cats around Whiterun, and once they've gotten to a high enough level and have proven themselves, we allow them access to higher and higher level baddies. Thus, we have a balance between our systems that also supports our intended experience. The player gets to adventure and have an experience that evolves, and they get to feel like a powerful hero overcoming great challenges, but they aren't going to get overwhelmed and turned off by stumbling into something they weren't ready for. And right here is where I want to quickly circle back to the beginning. People, I think, can be very quick to call something imbalanced when they're dissatisfied with something. And I think this is because a lot of people's perception of game balance more or less comes down to balanced equals good and imbalanced equals bad. And because game balance is an incredibly pervasive and foundational pillar of game design, that must mean that if game equals bad, then game must also equal imbalanced. Is that true? No. Skyrim is a balanced game. However, that doesn't mean there aren't still problems we can point to. A lot of people don't really like the way Bethesda RPGs handle their leveling. It makes the game world feel kind of fake and like it doesn't exist without the player. One might wonder why an open-world RPG would settle for making its world feel less real, but that's a question answered by thinking about the intention. Our main audience, the casual player, isn't going to care as much about the world feeling real. They just want to have fun questing around and feeling like a great hero, and they want to do it at their own pace. So in this case, the game balance isn't the issue. Rather, people are dissatisfied with the intention. So then, how do we know which is which? How can we glean the developer's intention? How do we know when something is imbalanced, and how do we know when it is the intention and not the balance that is the issue? To explore this, I want to look at another example, Warhammer 40k Mechanicus. So how can we deduce the developer's intentions with their game? For Skyrim, it's easy to know their intentions, because over the years, Todd Howard has been very consistent. In the infamous Chess Club interview, Todd Howard says his ambition was to make games everyone would play. And, well, most people play games casually. But what if the developer doesn't have as big or as high profile of a mouth as our boy Todd? In that case, we can try looking at the developer's design decisions and then work backwards from there. So, let's take a quick look at Mechanicus. Mechanicus is a tactics game where you'll pilot a squad of tech priests as they explore and fight in an alien labyrinth. Each priest has access to a whole host of equipment options as well as several different upgrade paths, and while the best bonuses come from focusing your resources into one, you aren't restricted from multiclassing if you want to. The guns your priest can wield have a varying point cost for each time you shoot them, however melee attacks are always cheap. In addition, you can summon a variety of special troops onto the battlefield, and these get to attack completely for free. However, summoning them can also carry a hefty point cost. Now, the upgrade paths each priest has access to are designed to give them each a different role. There's a medic, a gunner, a melee specialist, and even one designed to buff your troops. Multiple upgrade paths here give stat bonuses that restrict the equipment a priest can wield, necessitating a diverse squad if you want to have the strongest stats. With all this laid out, we can assume, then, that the intended experience is for the player to create a diverse squad of tech priests, each with different strengths and weaknesses who can cover for each other. However, the skills and equipment options aren't really designed to support this, and here's where we get into how the game is imbalanced. The medic is basically vestigial once you know what you're doing, since their absence can be easily compensated for with the right equipment and good play, and the melee priest can be easily outclassed. The melee priest gets big bonuses to his health, movement, and damage in exchange for not being able to wield a gun. The gunner gets similar bonuses, but notably one of the first skills you can get is an ability that reduces the cost of firing a gun the next time the priest shoots. Because you can easily multiclass, this means any tech priest in your squad can spec into this ability and comfortably wield a strong gun. You can easily stagger your strongest attacks between your priests, and spend most of a battle never having to pay the full cost of a weapon. But it doesn't stop there. The troop buffing class I mentioned has the ability to summon any troop anywhere onto the battlefield for a measly 1 point. A melee priest has to worry about getting into position, and his movement buffs help with this, but he doesn't compare to the troop class's ability to simply drop a giant punch robot wherever they please. The punch robot also comes with a flamethrower, giving it further versatility which the melee priest cannot boast. Having a dedicated melee priest does have its bonuses, but you can more than make up for their absence with the various equipment, powers, and troop options you can take, especially if you're exploiting that weapon cost reduction upgrade, and especially once you know what you're doing. Here, we have an example of genuine imbalance. I don't think anyone would disagree with our intentions here. Making various diverse squads to tackle the game's problems in different ways sounds like a lot of fun, but our options just aren't supporting this. There's a big disparity between the strength and versatility of each priest type, and I want to use this as an example of how understanding intention is important for understanding imbalance. This here is a common example of imbalance, where multiple options in a game that are seemingly supposed to be equal just aren't. It's probably what a lot of you think of when you think about game imbalance, and it's the most common point of discussion in any character-based genre, like a MOBA, a fighting game, or the genre I'm most familiar with, the hero shooter. You might think in these games that the intention would be for each character to be equally as powerful as the others, but it seldom actually is. More often, the intent is for each character to have a niche, allowing them to fulfill some role and thus see at least some play. In Marvel Rivals, for example, Adam Warlock is generally a lot less powerful than Luna Snow, but this doesn't fall short of our intentions. Luna Snow is intended to be a generalist sort of character, a main healer who can fit into a large variety of team compositions, while Adam Warlock is much more niche. He's generally less powerful than Luna, but within his niche, he shines very well, and thus can see play despite the apparent disparity. This is sort of the case in Mechanicus as well. Each priest has a job, however for some, their niches can be filled just as well or even better by other things. So in a hero shooter, our scale looks like this. Our base, our intention, is that we want all characters to see play. On one side we have all our different options for characters, and on the other, we have all the different niches and roles they fulfill. If we get things right, our scales balance each other out and fulfill our base intention. In Mechanicus, it looks like this. Our intention is that we want the player to experiment and create a diverse squad of tech priests. We can place the different options on the scales, however we see that some options outweigh the others. This reduces the diversity of our squads and discourages experimentation, which doesn't line up with our intention. It's not a perfect comparison, but I think you get my point. The way the priest classes are designed could theoretically be balanced with different intentions, however they're falling short of our actual intentions, which makes it imbalanced. Imbalance can arise from all sorts of things, whether intentional design decisions not lining up, like we see with Mechanicus, or unintentional things like bugs. For instance, the Godric the Grafted fight in Elden Ring. The combat in Elden Ring, and all Souls-likes, is balanced around the enemies having lots of health, doing lots of damage, and being able to brutally punish the player when they make a mistake. But the enemy attacks are visually well telegraphed, allowing the player to react and avoid them. The problem with the Godric fight is, and it appears they fixed this at some point, so I don't have any footage of it, but I swear this used to be a thing, that in his second phase, he introduces fire attacks into his moveset, and the flame particles from these attacks had a tendency to seemingly disappear beneath the floor, but still be able to hit the player. The player is trained to spot attacks and avoid them, but these attacks can hit the player regardless of whether they can see them or not, leading to the player being unjustly punished. This puts weight on the scales and detracts from the fight's balance. So those are genuine examples of imbalance. Our scales in each of our examples aren't lining up. But what about intention? When can we say that's the problem? Well, I've already mentioned the problems people have with Skyrim, so let's look at a very different game. DUSK is a boomer shooter, and like all the best of its kin, it has a solid arsenal of weapons for the player to use. Two of these weapons are the dual pistols and the dual shotguns. These weapons are very silly and stylish, and they feel punchy and good to use. But after a certain point, there is literally no reason to ever use them. the pistols because their damage starts falling off, and the shotguns because they share ammo with the super shotgun, which is one of the strongest weapons in the player's arsenal. This kind of design isn't uncommon within the genre. In a medieval, you have multiple weapons sharing your green and blue ammo pools. In Doom Eternal, the plasma rifle is outshined by the ballista, and this isn't imbalanced. The intent here is for the combat to have a sense of escalation as new weapons and enemies are introduced, while also cutting down on bloat in the player's arsenal. But that doesn't mean it doesn't feel kind of lame. These weapons are well designed and fun to use, and I wish the game would let me use them without it just gimping myself. So the intention here, for the player to trade out their weapons for stronger ones as the game goes on and introduces harder challenges, is what's causing the problem for me. This speaks to a problem though. When dealing with issues of intention, that's most often a subjective thing. I'm sure plenty of people don't mind that DUSK and other boomer shooters choose to handle their weapons this way. And this leads us to why I think people can prioritize balance too highly. Before we get to that though, thinking about game balance has got me wondering, is there ever a root to these problems? If balance isn't an issue, is there ever one poor intention that leads us to a less than satisfactory experience? Obviously not always, but, well, here is where I want to circle back to Marvel Zombies, because I've recently noticed an interesting issue. To reiterate, just so nobody gets lost, the highest difficulty in the Marvel Zombies mode, Nightmare 4, has nearly every enemy capable of one-shotting the player. This is absurd, but I'm saying it's not imbalanced. So if I think this, then what are the poor intentions with the rival zombie mode and with the Nightmare 4 difficulty in particular? Well, let's look at the scales one more time. On one side of the scales, we have hordes and hordes of zombies. The players need to be strong enough to fight them, so on the other side we have the upgrades in the zombies mode that make our players suitably ridiculous. Something you may have picked up on is that there can be multiple intentions forming the base of our scales, so let's lay out our first one. We want the players to have fun shooting hordes of zombies. For this, we want our players to function independently of each other, because otherwise one player in a squad would be stuck playing support, and nobody's coming to a zombie horde mode for that. Now how do we achieve this? One way to do it is to give our characters access to loads of health regen and lifesteal, so put that on the scales. Oh wait, now we have a problem. The players do so much damage that, with their lifesteal and health regen, they will virtually never die. They can tank as many zombies as they want, and be just fine. This might not be a problem, but here's where we roll out our second intention. This is Nightmare 4, the highest difficulty in the Marvel Zombies mode, so we want it to be hard. Well then, here's an idea. What if we made it so the player couldn't simply out-heal the damage? You can't out-heal being one-shot, so what if we made it so the enemies could one-tap the player regardless of their health? This allows the players to still be independent, heal off any chip damage, and deal with the bosses, but they're still facing a challenge fitting of the highest difficulty. So we have a balance, but there's a problem. This shit isn't fun at all. Sure, it's a challenge, but it's not fun. With so many zombies on screen, it can be incredibly frustrating to just insta-die because one out of an entire horde snuck an attack through in a way that was nearly impossible to predict. So this won't work, right? We need to come up with something else. Well, here's intention number 3. Disney told us we need to have a tie-in ready, and we have a scant couple of months to work on it. Balls. We could experiment and find a challenging gameplay loop that's still fun and feels good for the player, but we don't have time for that. So now what? Well, why don't we just leave things as is? I mean, this is balanced, right? That's what you want, isn't it? And here's where we get into that interesting little issue. If all a developer cares about is balance, that, in and of itself, can be a poor intention that drags the experience down. As much as you've probably been led to believe, and as much as I might have made it sound, games don't necessarily have to be balanced. For a competitive multiplayer game like a hero shooter, MOBA, or fighting game, it's most definitely preferred, but it's far from required. Morrowind, for example, is an unbalanced mess, and it's still a compelling world that can be a blast to fuck around in. Even a hero shooter like Team Fortress 2 can get away with being unbalanced. No class in Team Fortress 2 has weapon options that are well balanced with each other, and there's even a huge disparity between the classes themselves, with Spy being greatly outshone by Sniper in the vast majority of circumstances. How does TF2 get away with this? Because it's just a fun time. To circle back, balanced does not equal good or fun, and just as I think players can put too much focus on whether a game is balanced or not, I think developers can sometimes place the game's balance over the game's feel or fun factor. There's nothing wrong with the first, second, or third of our developers' intentions regarding Nightmare 4, but it seems to me that, at some point, making sure the mode was balanced was placed on top of the priority list, thinking perhaps that would be good enough. You might say that's not fair given the time constraints the developers faced in developing the zombie mode, but I would say that they simply didn't need to make the mode balanced. They could have just let the players be overpowered and let Nightmare 4 be a bit too easy, and it would have been more fun and less of a frustrating slog for it. All over the place you can find what I think are examples of this mindset. In another hero shooter, Overwatch, the character Moira had her weapon reworked. Her primary is a heal that works off of a resource meter, and it used to heal a lot, but drain the resource very quickly. At some point they reworked it to heal more slowly and drain the resource more slowly. And irrespective of whether or not this is more or less balanced, it feels like ass to use. Moira's kit was all about being fast and aggressive, and every part of her kit reinforced this. Every part except for her main heal, and this made her normal gameplay loop flow incredibly awkwardly. It was like a wheel with a big rock stuck to it, preventing it from rolling smoothly. So why was this change made? In the pursuit of balance. And not only that, but the pursuit of balance above all else, above how this change would make the character feel. Hero shooters are live service games that receive regular balance patches that change things around, so you might expect the occasional misstep. But even outside that genre, this can happen. I've already given an example with DUSK, but from that to things like boss runbacks in a Souls game, neither of which are imbalanced but do nothing to make the game more fun, it's all over if you look for it. And one of the reasons I think a lot of these unsatisfactory design decisions are left alone is because they're still balanced. And to tie everything together, I think Marvel Rivals is actually a good game to look at in regards to both player and developer perception of balance. Like I said, I've heard plenty of people say Marvel Rivals was imbalanced, but for the most part, I don't believe that to be the case. As I've outlined before, the way the supports and their ultimates in Rivals are designed serves to balance out the power of the other characters, their potential offensive output, and their ultimates. But that doesn't make the supports fun. It makes the support gameplay feel extremely one-note. It restricts how supports can be designed, and it makes every teamfight more or less boil down to whoever runs out of counter-ults first loses. These are all valid things to complain about, but they aren't issues of imbalance. And on the developer side, this game has been out for a year and we haven't seen this get iterated on at all. In fact, we've seen the devs seemingly embrace it, with changing Jeff's ult to be more in line with the other support ults, and releasing Gambit, who, in my opinion, obviously had healing awkwardly tacked onto his ult late in development. Why? Well, because it's balanced, and that's what you want, right? So then, to circle back, why do people, both players and developers, seemingly prioritize balance this much? Where is this sentiment coming from? Well, balance is an incredibly pervasive pillar of game design. nearly everywhere you look you can find examples of it in action, so it's fairly easy to understand, at least at a surface level. So what we could have here is a hammer and nail problem. If the only tool you understand is game balance, then every problem must be a balance issue. But I think another reason is that balance can be a fairly objective measure. It can be hard to put your opinions out there, but whether or not something is balanced can have a fairly concrete right and wrong answer, which makes it easier for one to assert themselves. I think this leads back to the sentiment I mentioned earlier, that balanced equals good, right, and imbalanced equals bad, wrong. But balanced does not equal good or bad. As I said in the beginning, game balance is a technique. It is a tool. So really, this video has just been me reiterating something I've said before, that when you have an issue with a game's design or a developer's choices, try to think about it on a deeper level. When you encounter an issue, think about why whatever you're dissatisfied with is the way it is, and ask the question, is it an issue of balance, or is your problem with the intention behind that design? And hell, on the off chance that anyone here one day gets inspired to pursue game development themselves, I hope you can remember that balance isn't everything, that it shouldn't be prioritized over a game's feel, and that it is a tool and not the end-all be-all. So with that, I hope my ramblings today have done a little bit to sharpen your understanding of this topic, and I hope you all have a good day. Okay, we're back for the notes at the end of the video again. I'm trying real hard to get this video out, so I'm gonna try and be quick. So I hope you all had a happy Thanksgiving, and I hope you all had a very Merry Christmas. I had a very good holiday season, so I hope you all did as well. So I'm gonna be reiterating a couple things here. To close the year out, I just want to say again, I cannot believe how far I've come into this just short couple of months. It is more than I ever could have expected, and, you know, I've said this before, but I have no plans of stopping anytime soon. Looking towards the new year, my New Year's resolution is that I want to work harder, because I promised that I was going to get a video out, one more video out before the end of the year, and we did it, but I could have gotten this out in like early mid-December if I had worked harder. And so that's going to be my number one resolution. For you guys' sake, the audience, for my sake, for the sake of everyone who has supported me, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to optimize like my shit workflow. I'm going to like really knuckle down and kind of figure out a good way to push through any blocks I might have. And I'm going to try and be more elaborate with my style and with my writing. So hopefully you all can look forward to that. So next year, I'm going to put out 1 or 2 more videos, and then the review that I said I wanted to make, the game review. So look forward to that early next year. I don't really have very much to say, so please stay safe, and I hope you all have a happy new year. Goodbye.